Welcome, everybody. I call this March 28th business or Monday meeting to order. This is our first meeting in a school building in 2 years, so we're very, very excited to be here today. We will kick things off with a roll call. Barb, if you'll call roll, please.
Director Beckett,
Here.
Director Walker,
Here.
Vice President Villanueva,
Here.
and President Rice and Director Navarro Jr. are absent today.
Thank you. First item on the agenda is our Pledge of Allegiance, and we're very lucky to have student Emin Gingrich here leading the board in the pledge, and Principal Manson will introduce him. And our student will also read the March Character Word of the Month with us for us. Principal Manson, please.
Good afternoon and welcome. As she said, I'm Dennis Matson, the principal here at Yakima Valley Technical Skills Center. We like to go by YV Tech. It's much easier to say. Leading us today in the Pledge of Allegiance is Emin Gingrich. He's a senior from Eisenhower High School, and he's a member of our Culinary Arts program.
Please rise. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which we stand, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. So our March word of the month is grace. Stands for the quality of state of being, considerate or thoughtful, disposition to an act or instance of kindness, courtesy, or clemency.
Thank you. Thank you so much for being here with us and reading or leading us in the Pledge of Allegiance and reading the March Character Word of the Month. Board members might want to ask you a question or share a thought with you briefly. Director Beckett, would you like to kick us off, please?
Did I hear that you're in the Culinary Arts program?
Yes.
Can you just share a few thoughts with us about your experience in that program?
Very new compared to my previous, let's say, experience with school because of COVID. There's not much been real high school experience, but YV Tech has helped. Now that we're here doing stuff new, exciting, it's been a wild ride.
Well, I'm glad we're back and I wish you the best of luck. Thank you.
Emin, what's been the best part of being back in school and in class?
I'd say personally, I struggled with online learning. I hated not being there to ask the teacher directly. And now that I'm here, you can ask Chef Ned. I ask him a billion questions a day about anything. So it's the direct help is mostly the best part for me.
Good. What's your favorite meal to cook?
I'm gonna say at the beginning of the year we did a jalapeno corn chowder,
Ooh,
and so far that one has been. I like stuff on a bit of the spicy side, so.
that sounds delicious. Well, thank you so much for being here, Director Walker.
Technical difficulty. I'd like to thank you also for being. What are your goals? What you doing
I'm going to be moving down to Oregon to Seaside Christian Culinary University. I'll be specializing in seafood. So, I hope so. I am working currently, so I can feel that it's been very hard in the culinary. A lot of places are understaffed, and there's a lot of work to be handed out.
Well, thank you so much for being here with us, Emin. And I think Principal Manson, were you going to introduce the culinary teacher and students who helped today?
Thank you, Emmett. Really appreciate it. Yeah, I'd just like to take a moment and introduce our culinary arts teacher, Mr. Ned Walsh, and give him an opportunity to introduce two of his students that helped prepare this evening. So with that, Mr. Walsh.
Hello, everybody. My name is Lindsay Brown. For at YV Tech for the culinary program, I was here last year too, and during online, it was definitely different. Watching chefs try and do the demos was something interesting, but when we came in during the last portion of last year, um, it was very good to see everybody in the kitchen and actually see the kitchen. One thing that I really love about the culinary arts program is that I can be able to see how a functioning commercial kitchen works. YV Tech has helped me get a job at the Yakima Steak Company during the Christmas season. It was very, very busy, and we had multiple different dinner services. And so I was able to work on time management and learn how to function in a commercial kitchen properly. After high school, I'm going to be starting at the Oregon Coast Culinary Institute in Coos Bay, Oregon, where I'm going to go and get my AA in Baking and Pastry Arts and my bachelor's in Hospitality and Tourism.
I'm Trinity. Uh, my favorite thing about culinary is the different things we get to learn and how it helps when you get a job. It's actually the reason I have my job right currently. I work as a chef at Whistling Jack Lodge. Sorry. After high school, I'm going to be working for a year, and then I'm going to London for business school. I'm going to go for my bachelor's.
Awesome. Well, thank you for both for being here and for sharing a little bit about your future. It's exciting to hear how the skills you've learned here at YV Tech have not only impacted your employment today, but it's fun to hear about your future plans as well. So thank you so much for being here. Next on our agenda is the Yakima Land Acknowledgement. Director Walker, if you could read that, please.
Yes, hopefully my computer will stay going while I'm doing this. Yakima Land Acknowledgement. Today, the schools of the Yakima School District rest in the ancestral lands of the 14 confederated tribes and bands of the Yakima Nation. The people of Yakima Nation inhabited more than 12 million acres across Adams, Benton, Chelan, Douglas, Franklin, Grant, Kittitas, Klickitat, and Yakima counties. Today, we honor those Native peoples who are tied to the land through history, legends, and culture. We acknowledge their descendants who live in the world today. We thank the caretakers of this land who have lived here and continue to live here since time immemorial. An acknowledgement is a simple, powerful way to show respect and a step toward correcting the stories and practices that erase Indigenous peoples' history and culture. It also honors the truth. As a school district, we will continue to build upon our relations with the Yakima Nation. Thank you.
Thank you. And next we have the National Assistant Principals Week proclamation. Director Beckett.
We have a proclamation regarding National Assistant Principals Week of April 4th through 8, 2022. Whereas assistant principals are educational visionaries entrusted with the education and care of young students, a most valuable resource. And whereas assistant principals work cohesively with their leadership and teaching teams to develop and maintain high standards for education. And whereas assistant principals show leadership, which is an important role that students can emulate. And whereas assistant principals are called upon to do various tasks to discipline, coach, teach, encourage, enlighten, engage, counsel, and empower others. And whereas the celebration of National Assistant Principals Week would honor P through 12 assistant principals and recognize the importance of school leadership in ensuring that every child has access to a high-quality education. Now, therefore, the Board of Directors hereby declares our appreciation to the assistant principals of the Yakima School District and proclaim the week of April 4th through 8th, 2022 to be National Assistant Principals Week, and urge all citizens to join us in recognizing the dedication and hard work of assistant principals in preparing today's students for tomorrow's world.
Thank you, Director Beckett. Before we move into the next phase of our meeting agenda, I want to thank the students again for being here. You're certainly welcome to stay if you want to, but if you'd like to move on with your day, that's fine too. The next item is our school presentation, so invite
Okay, good afternoon. Welcome to YV Tech. My name is Foong Pham. I'm the Dean of Students, and I'm honored to be part of the presentation team today. Hopefully at the end of this presentation, you'll have a better understanding of YV Tech and the passion that we have and the reason why we're here. So I'm going to start out by reading our mission statement, which is our mission is to prepare all students with the skills, knowledge, and attitude to successfully advance to the next educational or career level. And our mission statement represents just one of the core benefits of how and why we should be serving our community. YV Tech is one of only 14 skill centers in the state of Washington. We offer 2 sessions a day for 2.5 hours, a morning and afternoon, depending on the schedule of the student at their sending school. Currently, we have 21 different programs. They range in career pathways from health sciences, skilled trades, all the way to information technology. So what I'd like to do next is show a video that was produced by one of our students in our entertainment media production program.
Hi, my name is Taylor Jermeau, and I am part of the Entertainment Media Production classroom. I realized I wanted to go to YV Tech when the flyer came in the mail, and since being in this classroom, I have learned editing skills. I have found the career that I want to get into, which is radio broadcasting. This classroom has opened a lot of doors to different career paths, and I've realized I finally want to go to college, which was something I didn't want to do before YV Tech. And since being in this classroom, I have learned different communication skills. I have learned how to work in a team. I have learned how to edit better. I've learned cameras, audio work, learning different skills for the real world, like communication and teamwork. I've learned quite a bit of stuff. Yeah, YV Tech's pretty cool. It's very helpful.
I am Brianna Berry, and I chose to take YV Tech this year because I like the fact that you are able to take a course based on what kind of career you want, and I really like the fact that I am able to learn specifics about this field and about this career that will then help me down the road. Hopefully make it easier when the time comes to get to college, and just so I can know what they're talking about over there. I think that this class is really beneficial to me because I am able to learn things that
will help me down the road in college and then will help me down the road even more in my career. And just so I can get a basis of information in this type of skill and in this type of field that can then help me in the future.
A student named Logan Dagadan, and he's a senior at Eisenhower High School. This is his second year doing that program, so you can see kind of the level and the rigor that he has already learned, and hopefully is successful when he graduates. Next up, I'd like to introduce our instructional leadership team. There are 17 instructors here. Some actually teach multiple programs based on their endorsement and their industry background. I truly believe that the instructors are one of the core strengths of our building because of not just their expertise that they bring from their field, and some of these have decades of experience in the industry, but also the advice and the real life skills that are needed, and they teach that, and it comes through to the kids every single day when they teach them. Here is a breakdown of the demographics of our enrollment based on students from each district that we serve. So when I referred to a community earlier, it extended beyond just the city boundaries of Yakima. It is countywide. It is schools all the way from Kittitas, Ellensburg, all the way down south through touching Wapato, Grandview, Granger, all the way down to Mount Adams. So we take pride in not just representing the kids or the students, young adults in the area, surrounding area geographically, but also all the way down, up and down the valley. And we truly believe that when we say YV Tech, we are just really an extension of all these high schools in the form of we represent an opportunity for these kids that many of these districts don't have the resources or the resources or the equipment that could provide that, and we provide that opportunity for them to take advantage of. Next up is our enrollment broken down by program, and you'll notice that year after year we do fluctuate on enrollment numbers based on the programs and the different types, and what kids are interested in varies from year to year. But historically, we do have many programs that are popular: consistency, cosmetology, the automotive programs, and the health science programs tend to always load up or fill up early and often. So we do, however, have seen a decrease this year based on pre-COVID numbers. However, when you are trying to emphasize that we are really strong hands-on skills-based programs, and you do not allow the kids to actually come in and practice these hands-on skills, we tend to feel that that could be a large contributing factor to why there has been a decrease. However, this upcoming year, we're hopefully looking for our pre-COVID numbers, where we were always consistently trending in an increase of student enrollment. So hopefully, again, we break that trend now that the opportunities are opening up again. And in ending, I just want to say that when we as YV Tech go out and present at all these schools that you see, our message has always been that we provide an opportunity for them to take advantage of, because when you're only 14, one of 14 in the whole state, not everybody can take advantage of that opportunity. And so when we speak to them, our message is pick a career. And it's not necessarily pick the career and you have to stick with it for the rest of your life. It is pick a career so that you can start one early, because the earlier you start that career, the more successful you will be and ready career-wise, skill-wise when you graduate high school. So that's kind of why we exist and why we, again, are so passionate about what we do here at YV Tech. So in closing, I would just kind of present it along to Mr. Mattson for the rest of the presentation.
Thank you, Mr. Fong. All right, good. So what I'm going to do is just provide a brief overview of what a skill center is. And for us, it's pretty clear. We're multifaceted, but we do have a clear purpose. And one of these is to provide a high-demand, high-wage programs that enable students to combine their academic knowledge and their technical skills. We enable students to obtain industry-recognized certifications. Examples of these at YV Tech in our nursing program, we have the Nursing Assistant Certification, or the NAC. And then in our second program that I'll give an example of is in automotive. We have the Automotive Service Excellent Certification, or the ASE certifications. We also need to provide related supplemental instruction. And as an education, we like acronyms, so they're called RSIs. In these cases, it's called internships, pre-apprenticeships, and apprenticeships. And most importantly, we need to ensure that all students are post-secondary prepared for college and/or career. As Fung mentioned earlier, we do provide services to 13 different high schools, or 13 different districts and 15 high schools. And so we are very cognizant that they all have their strategic plans, but Yakima is our host district, and we support the strategic plan through goals 2, 3, and 5. We accomplish this in a variety of ways. Our curriculum is inherently engaging. It's hands-on, it's completed in a collaborative setting, and it's through a lab experience. Our programs are aligned to provide equivalency credits. These are core academic credits in English, math, science, physical education, and art. We also provide dual credit opportunities. These are college credits. We provide these through Yakima Valley College, Spokane Community Colleges, Walla Walla College, as well as Bates Technical College, among others. As mentioned earlier, students can earn industry-recognized credentials, certifications, and we also provide experience worksite learning through related supplemental instruction. And maybe one of the most important things we do is we provide our students a professional skills assessment. This focuses on the development of 21st century skills. They need to know what it means to be a valuable employee and a good citizen in our community. Mr. C will share more of this later in our presentation. Our focus this year has been to develop more worksite opportunities for our students. This is being accomplished with our Career Connect Washington partners. They're called intermediaries. You will hear me use partners more often because it's easier to say. Briefly about Career Connect Washington, it's a program that was launched in 2017. It was funded in 2019. This is designed to bring businesses and education together so that students have the opportunity to gain valuable work experience. There are 3 levels of Career Connect Washington. First, this is Career Explore. This is for the elementary students. It's career awareness, and these are interest inventories and aptitude tests. The second level is Career Prep. This is for middle school and does go into high school as well. This is where students have the opportunity for guest speakers, field trips, job shadows. The third level is Career Launch, and this is really focused on high school students and mostly for students that are eligible for employment. It's a work-based learning opportunity. In the Skill Center, our focus is with Career Launch. And we do this because there is RSI opportunity. There's internships, there's pre-apprenticeships, there's apprenticeships. It's also worksite versus classroom. What I'm saying is the students have the ability to apply their skills at the worksite. And then also, it's an employee-employer relationship, which is huge than a teacher-student relationship. They have the opportunity to take what we've shown them out into the real world, learn how to communicate, collaborate, and do the things that are necessary for them to be successful. We're currently at 4 different stages, or 4 different career launch programs, and they're all in different stages here at YV Tech. The first of these that I want to talk about is computer technician. We are partnered with Computing for All. And in this program, we hope to launch our first paid internship this June of 2022. A second program that we're currently working on is cybersecurity. Again, we're partnering with Computing for All. This program will launch in the fall of 2022, and we hope to have our first students in, I think it's summer of 2023 is when we'll have our first students in that program. Again, great opportunities for our students. The one that we've had the longest is our automation technician, and we partner with Aerospace Joint Apprenticeship Committee, or AJAC. And in our first go around with this, about 3 years ago, we had 3 students that were employed and worked at Yakima Chief Hops. The last 2 years with the pandemic have been challenging. As you know, it's hard to get students into facilities, and it's obvious for the reasons. But we do have a couple, 3 students that potentially could land a position with Quick Lock in over the next month. One of our last programs is the automotive technician. And again, Independent Technicians Automotive Committee, or ITAC. We hope to have some students this summer involved. We're currently working with a couple of organizations, but for sure we'll have some in the fall of 2023. Additionally, I'd like to share one thing. We're currently working with OSPI to become the first skills center in the state of Washington to offer the seal of biliteracy. This will allow all students at YV Tech to sit for the test. It's definitely an advantage for some of our students from outside districts where they don't have that opportunity. With that, I'd like to present Mr. C.
Okay, thank you for having me. My name is Clem C. I'm formerly the Aerial Systems Operation and Design Instructor, and now I am moving into the College and Career Readiness position here in the building, doing that about half-time this year. So go ahead and forward here. I wanted to announce a partnership between ESD 105 and ourselves in looking at how we can provide the same benefits in career exploration that we do with our in-person students to students that are in districts that can't come the distance that it takes to get here. And we're talking about districts up here, up toward Cle Elum and let's see, Cle Elum, Roslyn, Easton, even Ellensburg. And so the idea here is developing a program that we're going to call the Hybrid Learning Academy. In that model, we have students meet at a central location. For now, it may end up being Ellensburg High School or their home school district. We're going to pilot this with a small number of students, and that allows us to reach some of the underserved populations that don't have access to one of the 14 skills centers in the state. We're investing in some camera technology that will allow students to have a more vision around the room and be able to track the teacher as the teacher speaks. Systems that allow for clear communication back and forth. Those students will actually be part of a class that their cohort and our cohort in the building will actually be the same cohort. Twice a month, those students will come into the building and be able to use our full-size equipment here in the building, and we'll be supplying them with equipment at their location as well to do some of the training remotely. This really cool experience, we're going to pilot this with 4 programs: the computer tech program, the electrical program, entertainment media productions, and then physical therapy. And so I'm sure I'll be in and out of those rooms helping do some tech support with those. But those are going to be some fun programs. And depending on how well, there's a lot of excitement around this from superintendents and teachers around the county and Kittitas County. And so we're hoping to be able to open that up even as to the south if it works out. The last 2 slides here are going to deal with goal setting. So in this building, of course, we have our own building growth goals, and we are supporting the Yakima Compass as well. So when Mr. Matson first came into the building, he worked with our staff, myself included, to try and create some building growth goals that made sense to us. Because of course, we're not a SBAC teaching location, but we want to be able to support that. And so with the reading initiatives that were in the district at the time, we developed a growth goal around students learning their industrial vocabulary. So in looking at our past goals up until our current goal, they all sound very similar. We wanted to be able to compare apples to apples, and even next year we will have almost a very similar goal that will allow us to, again, kind of see how we're coming out of the situation that we've been in. So the growth goal that you see here is from last year. This is the one where we're actually trying to identify for the majority of our students who struggled, can we bring those students up and see if they can make 25% growth in their vocabulary tests. We, of course, want 100% of our students to make growth, but we really wanted to focus on those ones that had room to make 25% growth. As you can see, the results came in at 32%, and we're going to work on that and make sure that we put emphasis on that for this, well, it's happening now, but of course for this following year. One thing that's of interest to us here is that as we start to emphasize these things around the building, students coming into their different industries, we want them to be able to talk the talk. So they're going into interview situations, pre-apprenticeship or apprenticeship interview situations. We want them to be able to talk like the profession that they're going into. So this has kind of helped ground us in the emphasis on industrial vocabulary for their chosen program. Our second growth goal involves the 21st century skills that we look at every day as a CTE-centered building. And so our growth goal written around this will identify a 21st century skill of interest. And for the past few years, the one that we've really identified as the one we need to work on is the one that allows students or enforces that students are here on time every day ready to work. That's, of course, the feedback that we get from employers when they come in and visit our programs. That's the feedback we get when they're trying to hire our students. That's the feedback we get when we're trying to place people into apprenticeships. We don't want to embarrass ourselves. We want students that can be here every day, be at their apprenticeship location every day, on time, ready to learn, asking questions. And so the growth goal reflects that. We say that we want 80% of our school, really 100, but 80% of our school of program completers. And what I mean by that is, and this goes for both growth goals there, but program completers are students that actually finish the year with us. I think it's important that we identify that how are we helping our partner districts and Yakima School District, how are we helping students reach their graduation requirements and goals? So our goal for this one was that we wanted 80% of students to score 75% on a chosen 21st century skill. And again, in the next slide here, I'll show you which one we chose that we've been working on pretty hard. On your table, you're going to see a printout. And the reason I gave you this printout is because it's really difficult to see up on the slide. And this is a really deep piece of paper. And I'm really not going to go incredibly detailed into this. We're going to look at this from the 10,000 foot view. The text is small, but my students have really good vision. I don't. And actually, this is really meant to be formatted for to be done digitally. So we can, of course, zoom in. And there are multiple formats for this. But this is the YV Tech Performance Review. The YV Tech Performance Review might look familiar to you if you're familiar with the work that Davis and Ike have done with Mark Perna and the Career Tree, in that they've created I think it's a 5-category rating system. And we were already in the midst of working on this one as a school. This was something that myself and multiple instructors around the building, big ups to Mr. Holliday for kind of giving me the idea, but we worked really hard to develop this. And so we chose to go this direction, which may look a little more detailed, but there are 25 criteria in 5 categories. Those 5 categories identify and highlight areas of professionalism such as engagement, conduct, content mastery, teamwork, and communication. In a nutshell, the way this works is a student shows up to YV Tech on the first day, and we're right away starting to tell them, this is what we need from you. This is how we want you, this is what we consider a professional. A student is going to read through this, and you'll notice, if you can actually read any of these, that they are student-centered statements. I can, I will. So students can read this and they're thinking of themselves. I can do this. You'll also notice that everything's written in a pretty positive statement. You're not going to see anything that says that you're lacking. It just says that you're working toward more growth. You're working toward proficiency. There is a column that I tell students they need to reach, which is our green column, the 3, the 75%, the proficient. So on our previous slide, when it mentioned the growth goal of having a 75%, this is what I'm saying. I need students to be proficient in these areas. But of course, we have our outstanding students. And if they can show me that they can mentor or some things where they are leading other people into success, then they may actually qualify for some of the 4 categories or in the column of the 4s there. So this has been really, really helpful to me because the really telling part is when I get to meet with a student one-on-one and we go through all 25 rows one-on-one. The first time is really painful, but you go through every row and a student has to prove to me why they chose what they chose. Very similar to TGEM, TPEP. We have to prove and provide evidence why we are proficient. I ask students to do the same thing. Then later we combine that with writing resumes. Now you've had experience standing up for yourself 25 different ways. In a resume, you can write this, you can go into an interview and you can repeat that process. And if we want to talk about competitive advantage, if a kid can tell a story or draw or bring something back in the experience that they've had here or in the outside world, they sound amazing in those interview situations. And we do practice interviews. This really helps me write letters of recommendation for a student, especially students who I haven't seen in a few years and I need a refresher. But we aren't going to water this down. This is one of those things where you need to prove to me why you're proficient in one area or another. And what's also amazing about this for us is that every program can cater, they can mold this to work for them. My standards and the needs of my programs might be different than yours. The wording and the skills are all the same. And the way that you achieve this in an electrical world versus a nursing world, that's up to you to state for your students. So this is something that we've been working on for years. We continue to. It's a living document. Staff has a lot of input on this, and hopefully we all have a lot of buy-in as well. I know I sure do. With that, there's a lot to this, and before we presented this to people, there ended up being a lot of questions. So I'm going to open this up to questions as well as anything else that we spoke about, and I really appreciate your time. Thank you.
Any questions or comments from board members?
I'd like to compliment you on the work that you're doing. I'm impressed by the number of programs we offer, and that's really exciting. Do you anticipate, just kind of being future oriented, do you anticipate maybe any other new programs that might be coming down the road that you're looking at?
Oh, I'm glad you asked. We removed that slide. Now I get to be my Bob Barker self. So we had a whole nother slide about what future plans we have, and some of it I want to keep under wraps until we can identify right candidates for them. But yeah, there are a handful that we're looking at. Things that are approved, things that we'll need to write up in more detail before we approach. If you want specifics, one of the ones that we're looking at is potentially an agriculture related program. I know that obviously hit the newspaper, and when I saw that I said, because I had just thought of that a couple of weeks before and had kind of written out our framework or outline for that. We're also looking at re-emerging some of our other programs from the past, the veterinarian type program, as well as one of the newest programs upstairs with our pre-medical assisting, kind of fleshing that out for a second year and making that more beneficial than it already may be. Am I missing any?
Obviously, what we have to look at, we have a great automation program. However, we need a first-year program, and we're looking at advanced manufacturing, where it'll be fabrication, CNC work, where the students then can take that knowledge into that AJAC program and better prepare them for their internships and their apprenticeships. So yeah, we're always working a year or two ahead, and so we will see some of these programs in the fall of 2023. I know the staff has said, Mr. Mattson, slow down. But one of the things is we realize that we have to continue to meet that industry need. And so as we're meeting with legislators, we're talking to local businesses, we see where those opportunities are. And so we're going to continue to pursue them. With our translation interpretation, I'm really excited where that ultimately can go. We're out aggressively pursuing and trying to get more students in that program. So again, those opportunities are there, and it's just us being able to present that and getting the students involved. But there's so many opportunities. And I think what was really impressive tonight, when you heard the students speak, they're all still talking about college, even though we do have industry opportunities for those students, but they understand there is other opportunities for them. And some may go the industry route to begin with, but then always go back into education, and it gives them those opportunities. And that's that multiple pathways that we talk about in education. It's that smorgasbord. How do I want to be successful?
Thank you.
I guess my only question would be, can you tell us a little about community partnerships? I mean, are there industries and trades in the community that are partnering with your program or individual programs?
Yeah, there are. We have what's called a general advisory council that we're responsible for meeting with 3 times a year. And so we have industry partners on there that work with us. I know through the cybersecurity, through computer tech programs. They sit in our meetings, and all of our committees have to have advisory, and they have to have industry members that help advise them of what our curriculum should look like, what standards we should be teaching to. So every program is different. I know Chef Ned works with different ones than Clem does. And then electrical, we have IBEW. We have the, with construction trades, we have that in there. So yeah, Trevor knows I'm pretty passionate about the providing more opportunities for our students in industry. And we're working on that. We'll see where we get, Trevor.
I don't have a question, but just want to thank you for all of your work. I am especially impressed with the paid internships and apprenticeship programs that you're able to pull together. That's such an important tool and resource for our students. You spoke a little bit about the Hybrid Learning Center, and I just think that's such a wonderful opportunity to engage students who may not otherwise be able to attend for distance or other reasons like that. And then on your form here, I note this little note at the bottom that says YV Tech offers assistance if you're in need of personal hygiene items, laundry, or professional wear. Our staff cares about you. I think that's just such a neat way to let our students know that you care, and if they need extra help, that and anybody is more than willing to step up and help them. So thank you so much for all of that work. I really appreciate it. I actually do have one question for you. If the school board were to give you a magic wand, which you could use to do anything you want to grow programs or increase student achievement, what would you do with that magic wand?
I know what I would do. I would offer more money for people coming out of industries that already make twice as much as they would make when they come here, as far as helping us recruit the right people into these types of programs. That's what I do. Bleep.
Yeah, that is one of the challenges when, I look at trying to get somebody for cybersecurity and they're making $150,000 a year, and I can say, here's what I can offer you if you want to come back. And we were very fortunate to borrow somebody from Andy. Thank you, Andy. To teach our cybersecurity program in our computer tech, but that is a challenge. And for us, I wish that we had the ability to extend our graduation rate or date for our students and provide them a 5th-year opportunity where we could really focus on those industry certifications in their internships. Our biggest challenge in here getting those opportunities for our kids is age. I mean, try to get a student out there 17, they can't do anything. And so they're really sweeping and pushing brooms, and yeah, they're job shadowing, but the intent for Career Connect Washington and Career Launch is that students actually apply their skills and their knowledge. And it's very, very challenging for us. So if we could get the school board to wave a wand and say, we want to give these students an extra opportunity, I think we could really solve a lot of our employment issues in our own valley by doing that, especially when you look at electrical and across the board. The needs in our valley are tremendous. Well, a career launch year, a career year,
launch year,
whatever that
okay.
would look like, where our students then would have that opportunity. And if we have them in a pathway, if we truly want to have programs of study and we want to have a pathway, career launch is that cap year. That's really where they get that opportunity to use it. When I look at our students here and I fleshed out dates and ages, we only have about 35 to 40% of our students that are 18 by March of this year. Well, how are you going to get them into a prolonged internship or apprenticeship the year's over, and if they're only 6 months into our program, they don't have those skills. And so that's just that opportunity for our students. And I think if we could provide that as a state or a nation, I think we would really see the opportunities for our students expand.
Thank you so much.
At the same time, we have every district and every superintendent that is pushing for graduation. So it's counter to what we're seeing from the 13 districts that are served here. And I think that's what you're referring to when, if we had an extension, if we weren't so focused on what the graduation rate would be here with our students at YV Tech. So it's kind of a rub. It's in opposition of what we're doing right now in K-12 education.
Yeah, and just so you know, with Career Connect Washington, they expect 60% of our graduating students by 2030 to have had a paid work experience. That's a daunting challenge. And I can't meet that goal right now with the system we're in. I'm just going to be honest. We'll do the best we can. Now, if they want to say because a kid went and mowed the lawns for the weekend and we're going to call that agriculture, or they went down to McDonald's and flipped burgers for 2 days, that's really not what this is meant to be. And so I'm pretty passionate about it. I think that in education, you know, we need to take a look a little bit differently. If we're really going to have these programs, how do we help our students get that success? And I think there's opportunity, but again, it's a different way of thinking. And as Trevor said, it's a double-edged sword. You go on one side or the other. So
Can you share that metric you shared again by 2030? What was it?
by 2030, they're expecting 60% of graduating seniors to have experienced some type of work site learning where it's a paid work experience.
Paid work experience.
And they haven't clarified, because I asked that question. I said, is that a day? Is that 6 months? Is that 3 months? What does it look like? And I think what we're going to see, like we do sometimes, is we'll evaluate that when we get close. But again, I think that we have to be very proactive if that's really what we want to do. As a nation, I was just very fortunate to send a national policy conference, and 90% of the conversation was around apprenticeship and opportunities for students in worksite and work-based learning. And Patty Murray's representative was there speaking passionately about what we need to do and provide these opportunities for students. So it's at the national level. But again, right now we don't have the right process in place to make that happen.
Thank you so much. Any other questions or comments?
So I just want to thank Mr. Mattson and also Mr. Pham, who's not here, I think at the moment. Thank you, Mr. C as well, and Chef. It's great to have all of you here to share the great things that are happening at YV Tech. I have 4 children, and one of my children actually went to a tech center for 2 years and was able to participate in building a computer and software programming, and ultimately took the college route. And it was a great experience for him to figure out what he really wanted to do. My other 2 children that came through, I did not have that experience, and I've made lots of mistakes as a parent. But I have one more coming through, and he will be a participant here as well. I think that this is really a hidden gem for a lot of our families, and we need to do a better job, I think, in all of the districts that are served by YV Tech, in letting our students, our children know and seeing what happens here as parents, because it is truly amazing. I had a meeting last week with Chief Murray, our police chief, and as we were walking through the facility, I think you were out at the moment, but we were meeting here, and he'd never been to the site before, and we were going in and out of classrooms and just seeing the hands-on activities. Somebody that had one perspective of what is happening in school, to see what we were doing here, he was just in awe. And we actually went upstairs to see where our police force is working. What are we calling that program?
Law enforcement.
Our law enforcement program. And they were actually going through the hallways, sweeping the hallways with shields and fake guns and rifles, as if they were responding to an emergency call in a school setting. And our police chief was able to witness this entire process just by chance, happenstance, as we were in the facility, and was amazed at the type of hands-on learning that takes place here. And I think that's probably what many of our family members would be surprised to see, how involved our students are in hands-on activity and work, which makes it so relevant, especially if you're somebody that really likes to learn that way. And it's a different way of counter to what we're typically used to, but something that we should all strive to do in every classroom. So thank you for that. And thank you for creating such an environment that when we have people stop by unscripted, that they're just amazed by what's happening here. And I would invite our board at any time, if you were interested in coming at some point during the day to see what's happening in our classrooms, I know that you would welcome that opportunity.
Absolutely. And just, Funga touched on enrollment. With this year, as of today, we have over 800 applications. We didn't have that last year. So I think the opportunity to get out there and present in public again and go to the schools has made a big difference. So we're really anxious about the opportunities we have. But again, thank you so much for allowing us to present and me to get on my soapbox a little bit. Education is a passion for us here. And again, we thank you.
Thank you so much. Okay, next on our agenda is a study session. We have some equity work with consultant Aaron Jones. You want to kick things off? Superintendent Green.
Thank you. Welcome, Aaron. So it's my pleasure to introduce our facilitator this evening. I think every once in a while in probably all of our lives, there's somebody that we can't ever remember not knowing, even though we did not know them all of our lives. And Aaron, for me, is that individual. I do not know how far we go back. It just seems like we've always been in, just known each other, and our paths have crossed multiple times. As the board is well aware, we began extensive equity work over, I believe it was a year and a half ago in earnest, 2020, 2021, when we had Dr. Pimpleton leading a lot of the work, including the formation and development of our equity policy. With his departure, we have been able to maintain our work around mainly working with our students. However, we have not been able to engage more as fully as a board. And I did share with the board that we would be have the opportunity to work together with the WASDA training. And our hope is that Aaron will be able to help with that as well. We did have to push that out. It was intended for this evening. However, WASDA is not yet ready, and we thought they would be, and that we would be able to move forward. So I've met with Erin, and she is going to start our work here today as a board and take us through several different types of activities and conversation. And I just want to say to you how grateful we are to have you as somebody that has not only served in many capacities across the state, that has been a teacher, has been in the classroom, has worked across the state and across the nation in a variety of difficult settings to help people reach consensus and understand where missteps occur. And we look forward to working with you today. So thank you for making time.
Yeah, thank you so much for having me here. And it's old home week, because I just keep running into people that I knew from other places that it just feels really good to be here. And I love this space too, I just have to say. So 2 of my kids came through Skills Centers, and I have one about to get a master's degree in computer science because of the Skills Center. So just have to throw it. My mom was a culinary arts teacher for 30 years. So this feels really good. It feels good to be in here having this conversation. So I'm glad it came early and got to listen. But thank you so much to the board members, to the school district officials. I have been in your seat before. I'm glad I'm not now, but just keeping it real. But I'm really excited to be here. And, I've done so much work in Yakima over the years that it just feels really good to be back here. I don't know how many of you were here. I did my very first keynote speech to open your school district 13 years ago. Yeah, at Davis High School. And the auditorium was the biggest group of people I had ever seen in my life. I was sweating profusely. You may not have seen it because I wore a suit, but y'all started my keynote speech run. I did. And I was terrified. It was probably the scariest speech I'd ever given in my life. But I did get a sting. I never forget that. And have come back since then many times to speak at Davis and Ike and some of the middle schools. So it's just such an honor to be with you today. And I love, Trevor, that you mentioned, I have been a classroom teacher, and I think a lot of people who know me think of just equity work. But the reality is I won the Milken Teacher of the Year Award for my instructional practice. And so I live to think of myself as a Jackie of all trades. I've worked at every place in the system, and my heartbeat is really how do we make sure that every young person gets quality instruction? That in the end, that's what I care about most deeply. And so I come to you as someone, yeah, who's done a lot of work around equity, but I come to you first as a teacher. That is my role in the world. I continued to teach online during the pandemic, which is also, I think, really important because as a consultant, I come to you as someone who knows what it's like to teach on Zoom. I've logged over 2,000 hours on Zoom. Not my favorite, and I love being in person now. But I come to you as someone who's negotiated that and navigated that. And so it really is an honor to be with you. So because we had planned that I was going to take the WASDA training and try to help you all with that, and it's not here, I want to offer an adapt and adjust. I'm a middle school teacher by trade. You don't know how to adapt and adjust, you die. So I'm going to adapt and adjust. And here's what I would like to offer you. There are 3 postures that I take as I think about doing this work. And I will say that the last 2 years, talking about equity has been harder than at any point in the 30 years of my work in education. It's a hard thing. And I want to offer to us as a way to begin that I think we are not good at talking about hard things like race, like politics, because for my 50 years of life, we've been told to not talk about them. And so we are unpracticed, we're unskilled. So that's the posture that I take from the very beginning, is not that we're bad people, not that some people are bad people. We have just been told to not practice this words and talking about these hard things. And so we're unskilled. So I show up in this place with incredible grace and mercy. I love that grace was the word too. Oh my gosh. I talk about grace all the time. And I think in this work, I show up with a ton of grace. I want to make sure we're lifting all of our students, but I think we have to show grace for one another as we fumble and falter and use wrong words. But all with the goal that we're going to get better, we're going to get practiced, because every one of our students of every identity deserves to have a really great education. So I just want to share that's my philosophy of this work. But because of that, there are 3 postures that I talk about, and we're going to practice that. So district folks, along with school board, I'm going to ask you to engage in this. I start with gratitude wherever I go. So I want you to think about something that you're grateful for. And here's why. I'm really intentional about this. Gratitude actually changes our brain chemistry. So it literally, if we make gratitude a regular practice, and that's not once a week, it's every day. If you will practice gratitude, it literally reforms the dendrites in your brain. And so every talk that I do about equity, we start with gratitude. And so on the count of 3, I just want you to whisper out, we're still COVID-y, y'all, whether we're wearing masks or not. I don't want you to yell out, but just if you could whisper out, even in the audience out here, one thing that you are grateful for today. On the count of 3, we're actually going to practice this, because I absolutely believe it's how I can show up and be positive, even in the most difficult of circumstances. So, thing that you're grateful for. 1, 2, 3. Okay. I heard lots of health. And I know we have a board member who's dealing with health stuff, right? So, well, we got 2 board members. So, hello. I assume you're watching somewhere, but I happen to be a praying person, so you're both in my heart today. But I just want to invite you, even as you think about district officials, your work, and school board as you think about your work, whether I'm talking to students or staff, government officials, we practice gratitude. I want to encourage you to make that, in these conversations about equity, I want to encourage you to make that part of your practice. It's not just a nice thing. It's a way to shift our brains to get in a more positive frame. So that's posture number 1. Posture number 2 is something I call brave spaces. So I want you to think about this question. What do you need to be your best and bravest self? What attitude do you need? What are the circumstances that you need to be your best and bravest self? I want you to think about that. I've spent a lot of time in the last 2 years thinking about why we have such a hard time engaging one another in effective, grace-filled ways. And I just want to offer a thought. I was not raised in the United States. I was born here, but I was raised in another country. And I came to America for college just as political correctness became a thing. And I just want to offer a thought that I think political correctness has taught us how to lie to one another. I speak 4 languages. I also speak body language. There is nothing worse than watching someone use the right words, but you can tell with their eyes and their body they don't believe those words. And so I think we've done a lot of that, like saying the right words while not actually believing them, but never having the real conversation about why we don't believe them. I want to invite us tonight to not do that. We've got to be honest. We're never going to get to truth if we're not able to be honest. Now, on the other side of that, it doesn't mean that you're just nasty. So I don't expect you all will be, but y'all, I've seen some board meetings. I don't know if you've been watching board meetings in other states, but I have. So I want to offer kindness as well. But I have an attitude that I was a really great classroom teacher, not because I created spaces for my students to be safe. I created spaces for my students to be brave. I modeled making mistakes and getting back up. I modeled trying hard things. So I want to invite us not to correct and not to safe, but to a brave space. And here's what I'm going to offer. As a coach, I coached basketball for 10 years, and then I also was an instructional coach. As a coach, one of the things I believe as a leader is leading by example. So I'm going to offer to you how I'm going to model brave. By the way, this is not comfortable, me being up here standing. This is not, I totally feel for those students who were like, what do I do? I'm 6'4" and right? This is not comfortable here. So I'm going to offer first, embrace discomfort. The conversation tonight may be uncomfortable at some point for you, okay? That's learning. It's part of the learning process. So I want to invite, for me, I'm going to model pushing through discomfort. I'm going to model being vulnerable. I'm also going to model something that I think as a culture we're not good at right now. I do not use, nor do I receive shame, blame, and guilt. I think we're doing a lot of that right now, and I think it's not useful. And I'll just use a school example. I taught middle school children most of my career. And if you've never been around a 12-year-old, you may not know, but they do dumb things all the time because their brains are not quite connected and fully developed yet. And so they do silly, dumb things. And yet never in my career in 30 years have I ever called a 12-year-old dumb. Because as soon as I did, that child would not learn from me. But guess what? We're no different. We're just big 12-year-olds. None of us wants to be called dumb either. And yet we're doing that on social media. We're doing that in family gatherings. We're doing it all. I want to offer tonight, let's not do shame, blame, and guilt. It's not useful. It's not, may feel good in the moment. It's not a way to help people get better. So I'm going to invite, for me, being brave is not shame, blame, and guilt. It also is when I make a mistake saying I'm sorry. And I did that last night, actually. I'm just going to say, be vulnerable. I made a mistake in a meeting yesterday and asked a question, and it made somebody there feel ashamed. And it wasn't at all my intention. And I didn't say, well, if you were upset by it, I apologize. I said, I am sorry. I can tell that you are visibly upset by the question I asked. And I am sorry. I want to invite us tonight. If you say something and you can see in someone's body language, oof, I just stepped in it. Instead of saying, oh, I didn't mean it that way, just say, I am sorry. 3 simple words. Not I'm sorry if, not I was just joking, just I am sorry. And the last thing I'm going to offer for me, how I'm going to show up brave. Let's get curious about people who vote different from us, who believe different from us, who grew up in different spaces. That is the hard, I'll just say for me, that's been the hardest thing about the last couple of years, and it's absolutely necessary in this work. We're actually going to serve all children. We have to be willing to get curious about people who are really different. Today, I have a friend named John, probably one of my best friends in the Spokane area, who was raised in Hayden Lake, Idaho. You may know of Hayden Lake, Idaho. His grandfather was one of the leaders in Hayden Lake, Idaho. He was raised as a white supremacist. And he today calls me sister. And it's because we chose, during my campaign for state superintendent, to get to know each other's stories. We could not have come up more differently from each other. We could not look, we both have red hair, but his hair is like Irish red. So very different red hair. But John is my friend today because I chose to get curious. I want to invite you tonight to get curious about people whose perspectives are really different because we're serving everyone, serving everybody's children. And I think curiosity is the bridge across which there is hope for unity. If we don't get curious, it's as if we've blown up the bridge. So, board directors, I invite you to add, is there anything else that as you think about having this conversation tonight, that you would add to what will it look like for you to be your best and bravest self tonight? Anything that I have not said that you would want to add? And this is weird, y'all, to teach like this is so weird. Can I just say, it's really weird. Standing up here as everyone sits and stares at me, this is really strange. Okay, anybody else? Okay. Yes. Oh, yes. Mm-hmm. One of my phrases lately has been, assume ignorance, not malice. Assume ignorance, not malice. And often what's really interesting is when it comes to us, we know our intentions. So we say dumb things. We assume, oh, I'm just ignorant, but we assume other people have malice. How about let's flip it on its head and let's assume that other people also start there at least. Yeah. Anything else? Okay. So last thing we're going to do, and this may sound wonky, but I just want to offer that this is also science-based. We're going to do a little ground-in strategy that I think is really important. How many of you say dumb things when you're tired? Hungry? Tired and hungry? Yeah. We're at the end of a day. Y'all have had a day. And I think so often we jump, especially those of you that are in leadership, we jump from one to the next, to the next, to the next, and we don't take time to just pause. How many of you have ever said or typed something that you wish 5 minutes later you had not done? Anybody ever done that? Yeah. We're going to do a little ground-in strategy. I usually do this for 30 seconds. We're just going to do it for 20. And I do this whether I'm working with 5-year-olds or 85-year-olds. There are lots of different ways to do ground-in strategies, but this is really about getting more oxygen to the brain. There's nothing yoga-ish about it. It's a lot of people are like, that sounds woohoo. It's about getting oxygen to the brain. It's about really getting ourselves settled. And so again, I want to give you postures because often when we do equity, we give lots of terminology, lots of content, and not the containers to hold it in. And so it goes into our heads and out of our heads. And I am really, the way that I'm different from a lot of trainers is I want to give you containers. And this is a container. So if you have anything in your hands, put it down. Sit up as straight as you're physically able to. If you're standing like me, stand as straight as you're able to. Get your feet as planted on the ground. I like to imagine that our feet are connecting us around this room in this work. If you're able to close your eyes and feel comfortable doing that, close your eyes. If not, find a spot on the wall and just focus on that spot. We're going to take 20 seconds to just focus all of our attention on the air as it goes in and out of your body. I want you to breathe as deeply as you can. As thoughts come into your head, cast them out. 20 seconds. Tell your brain, 20 seconds. I'm not thinking about anything. I'm focusing all of my attention on my breathing. I will count us off. Take a deep breath in. Blow it out. Take a deep breath in. Blow it out. Take one last deep breath in. Blow it out. Open your eyes, stretch a little bit. What does that have to do with equity? Has to do with saying dumb things when we get frustrated and anxious. I want to invite you at any point in this conversation or any conversations that you have in the future about hard things, whether it's this or anything else, to just pause and ground in. Now, you don't have to, board director, don't announce to the whole group, I need to ground in right now because things are hard. That's just weird. But pause I think we as leaders often think we need to have responses to things in the moment, and we say dumb things in the moment. We say things that are not thoughtful, and that creates so much conflict that we could avoid if we just paused. So I just wanted to offer those three things as postures: gratitude, brave spaces, ground in. A little bit of team building. I would love for our directors, if you would indulge me and just share maybe in 30 seconds why this work. And I want to explain to you why I'm asking this question. I think equity work is some of the hardest work. And if our why is not clear, when things get hard, it's easy to drop that ball. It's so easy to drop that ball. And so why you're doing this work, and maybe not at equity work, but why you're sitting on the board, if you'd be willing to indulge me in just 20 to 30 seconds. You don't have to give the whole essay. It's 20 to 30 seconds why. Maybe Director Villanueva, could you start us off there as the chair?
So the reason I'm on the school board is I want to ensure all of our kids have access to an equitable education. I have a lot of people in my family, myself included, my mom and dad, who had different experiences in school that did not align with equity and equality, and I don't like that, and I want all of our kids to have good experience and equity in their opportunity.
Thank you. Let's see, Director Walker, are you ready?
Yeah, one of the reasons I'm on the board is I grew up in Yakima, and I had a wonderful education in Yakima and went on and did other things in other places. But part of being on the board is giving back. And the equity piece is, it started for me. I remember when I was a high school student and I finished junior high, and I lived on the border between Eisenhower and Davis. And at the time this was a long time, over 50 years ago. At the time I was growing up, Eisenhower was 100% pure white. And Davis had a mix of what was living in Yakima in terms of ethnicities and cultures. And I made a conscious decision. I don't know where it came from, but I said, I don't want to be there. I want to be where I'm encountering people that have a different life experience than I did. And I did the same thing at college. I lived in a house, rather than live in a frat of all wealthy white boys, and I wasn't wealthy, but I lived in a rooming house with people from all over the world. And that just, for me, that just was so rich to see and interact with people that had a whole different experience than I did. And I just want to continue that. I really believe in learning how and seeing how other people live, and that we have more in common than we don't.
Director Bennett?
This is always such a hard question, and yet it's such a fundamental thing about why we're here. It's so funny to me how difficult this can be. But I have an 8th grader in the district this year, so of course his education has been one of the driving reasons that I'm curious and want to be involved in the district. And a large component of my job in the private sector with selling homes is working with families. And one of the questions everyone asks about is school district. And the responses I get locally have concerned me over the years. So it has led me to want to be involved and to know as much about the district to help represent people as I'm serving them in the community.
Thank you. Superintendent Green?
Not everybody has the same opportunity, and I think I recognize that from a young age. And just knowing that we have the power within our district, within our board, within our community, to make sure that everybody does not have the same opportunity, but has equitable opportunity so that we can achieve the same type of outcomes. I benefit from several things that have happened in my life, and I've seen peers that deserve the same type of opportunities and same type of supports that did not have that. And now being in a position where we can collectively make that happen is something that excites me every day, because it means that every student can make it if we're doing what we can to make sure that there is equity in place. So for me, equity is about making sure that every support is in place for every student, no matter what, so that they can succeed. And that's what drives me.
Awesome, thank you. So the next question that I wanted to ask is, because I'm a teacher, I'm going to have you do something with your hands. So if you could all put your hands out like you're cupping water. I don't know if you've ever been to a stream and cupped water out of a stream. I grew up on the mountains of Switzerland every summer, and I love going to the stream and getting fresh water. But I want you to imagine in your hands, what are the assets that you bring to this work? What are the assets that you bring to this work? And so picture in your hands holding those assets. What are the things that you bring? Organizational skills. You're a good connector. You're a good writer. You love numbers. You love finance. I want you to picture those in your hand right now. What are the things that you bring to the table? Okay, I want you to put your hands down. I love to talk about assets. When I facilitate leadership meetings, I love to have people talk about assets. When we talk about equity, we often only talk about the deficits. We don't talk about what students are bringing to the table, what their families are bringing to the table. I think about migrant laborers, and I think about immigrants and refugees. I think about students who have learning disabilities. My youngest son is about to have a master's degree from USC. He's on the autism spectrum. He had 2 birthday parties where not one child showed up. And he's about to get a master's degree from George Lucas's program. Every kid brings assets to the table. Doesn't matter what the labels are next to them. And so I think sometimes when we talk about equity, we only talk about the deficits. I want to invite us to think about, what are your most marginalized and minoritized students and their family? What do they bring in? Because they all have assets too. So I want to just encourage us and invite us to think about what that might mean. I'm going to talk about 2 terms that are often confused, and I've heard both of them. I want to read your definition of equity, which is really similar to the WASDA definition, the state level organization. It says the condition that would be achieved if one's group membership no longer predicted in a statistical sense how one fares. Equity is the outcome, not just access to opportunity. So I want to invite us into a conversation tonight about, what is the difference then between equity and equality? What is the difference between equity and equality? And maybe you don't have a good definitional difference, but where do you see, either at the local level, at the state level, or at the federal level, let's start with first, where are we seeing equality played out really well? Where are we being asked to do things equally and not equitably? Who can think of an example? So I think sometimes when we can get in our heads really practical ways that we see equality, it helps us then to juxtapose that next to equity. Where do we see equality either demanded or playing out in public education right now? Who has an idea about what is equality then? What is equality? Absolutely. Everyone gets the same thing. So where do we see equality play out, either at the local level in education, at the state level, or at the federal level? Where do we see equality? Sure, go ahead. Yes, please. I didn't know if I was allowed to ask you, but since you're offering. Core 24. Yes. So every student has to get so many credits. Core 24. Yep. Who's got another idea? What's something else that's equality? Anybody? Now he's opened the floodgates. So school district folks. 2. Yes. Oh, how we pay people, right? Yeah. Absolutely. And I heard that with the conversation about here, right? We've got, if you want to get teachers to come teach computer science, you could go make $150,000 easy at Microsoft, easy. But asking somebody to come be a teacher, yeah, so absolutely. What's another thing that we do equality really well? Go ahead, Nessie.
Rules.
So can you give me an
Rules.
example? Give me an example. That's a
Well,
great one.
Just school norms and rules and behavioral expectations, and also discipline codes are written just to supposedly be totally neutral,
Yes.
but they don't address needs. They just address observed behaviors.
Oh, that one we could do a whole session on that one. So I'm tempted to go into more, but for sake of time, I'm not going to do that. But I want to offer that is a great one. Discipline, the expectations that we have. There is one set of norms that operate. Doesn't matter where I travel in the United States. There's a way that we expect students to do school. That is very one size fits all. And so if you have a disability, I have a son with dysgraphia and ADD who sings anytime he's not engaged, which gets him in trouble all the time. Now, he has auditioned for The Voice and he sang an operetta at Carnegie Hall. Pretty phenomenal, but got in trouble in school all the time because the rules didn't align to his needs. So that's a great one. Anybody think of another one? Think about the pandemic. What's something that we did equally, at first especially? Remote learning. Everybody went home, and what did everybody get? A laptop. But guess what? If you don't have Wi-Fi, your electricity is not working. Maybe your parents don't speak English and you don't know how to access the stuff that's on the computer, right? When we started, we did everything equally. Give everybody a laptop, give them all an iPad. That doesn't take into consideration what are the needs of students. Right? So I just want to offer that equality is really easy. Equality is really easy. We just do the same thing for everybody. Equity is really hard. Equity is really hard because it means we need to look at both opportunity and then, wow, what are the practices and policies in place that may be hindering students from getting to that same outcome? And I often don't talk about getting to success because I think success in this country is really, it's driven by things like whether they're going to college, which I would argue, I love that the tech center's here. There are kids that can do absolutely fine coming out of a tech center. I think it's driven by how much money people make. I often talk about getting students to thriving or flourishing. That's Aaron Jones when I talk about equity. But I want to offer that that's really hard. It requires a lot more conversation. And that brings me to something that I want to share. I had the opportunity to talk to your, I don't know if it's Director of Equity, Trevor, is that what his title is? I can't, anyway. But we had a really great conversation about student voice today. I've been doing work across the nation for the last 2 years. Probably the greatest gift of the pandemic was I got to connect with students online. There are some school boards in the state of Washington that have a couple students on them. You don't. And you're one of only 2 districts that I know right now that your superintendent has access to a whole group of students. And so there is power in listening to the students who are going to be impacted by your policy. There's incredible. And so I just want to lift that up, that the only 2 superintendents I know are Anthony Smith in Riverside and you here in Yakima. But I would ask for you school directors, and I had the chance to talk to your chair about this today. Where are you hearing school directors? Where are you hearing student voice? So if you could share a little bit about how are you connecting in your personal life, and as you think about doing this work, how are you connecting to community to hear from students who are ultimately the ones that are most impacted by your decisions? Thoughts about where you're hearing. And then my next question is going to be, how could we better leverage the group that Trevor is meeting with and staff are meeting with to more effectively help you move along your equity work? So thoughts about that you'd be brave. Where are you hearing from student voice right now?
The first one I can think of is during the calendar conversations. We had some feedback session with the student voice. That's the first one, and really the only one now.
Okay. It's like being on mute on Zoom, right?
Right. How funny. That's exactly the same thing. During the, when we were campaigning, some students put together a student forum and student-led, organized, and we heard from a lot of students thoughts, concerns, things that were going on in their heads, and that was really powerful to hear directly from the students in that format.
Yeah. We had students involved in our strategic planning. So we had we had parents, community members, business members, faith-based members, and we had students directly involved in the development of the strategic plan and also in the development of our equity policy. We had students involved in that.
So where could you see opportunities in being more intentional as you move forward and thinking about leveraging that student voice? How could you imagine possibly, Trump, you look like you're like ready. You look ready. I'm feeling it.
Well, I think you're touching upon the next question is how we take it to the next level. When you originally asked that question, I was struggling to think of, it's kind of like, oh, we're not doing enough. And I think we can always do more, but to hear the examples that then came up and also recognizing that we had student voice, extensive student voice in our equity policy work last year, we're doing pretty good, but does it mean we can't do better? And I think it means, what you're asking is, how could we have this on a more regular basis influence the work that we do? And what comes to mind is a phrase I've been thinking about a lot lately, and that's nothing about us without us. If we have our students and we're here to serve our students, what are we doing to make sure that they're involved in the process, because it's ultimately going to impact them.
Right.
And certainly it has to be something that's it's real, it's true, that they can influence, not a decision that's already made where we're bringing in fake voice, but to be authentic with them.
Other thoughts about that from the board directors?
Well, I was just having a brainstorm, thinking back in some of my own experiences. If I left a training program or a graduate program or something, there was always an exit interview. And I would like to find a way to do exit interviews with some of our students and a cross section of students and ask them, what worked for you in your 12, 13, whatever number of years? What wasn't working for you? What would you suggest? And I think that could be a really powerful thing, to just get a cross section of kids and conduct exit interviews. I don't know how we'd set it up, but I'll leave the logistics to the logisticians.
Yeah, I just want to, and I love that I'm actually doing, they're not exit interviews, but I'm doing a listening tour with all of the students in Tumwater School District. And that's the whole point. What worked well for you? What would you change if you could change anything? And that's such powerful learning. So I just want to encourage you to be thinking about, and I appreciate what you said to Superintendent Green about, we need to make sure we're not just listening to students after we've already made a decision, because that happens a lot. How do we make sure that we're listening to students and allowing them to inform our decisions? And how would students, so I want you to be thinking about, how would students know that you've actually heard them, so that it doesn't feel like an exercise in just parading students so we can check the box and say we've heard students. I want you just to be thinking about that. I know that we are late on time, but I want to revisit, if we can, the school board policy on equity, and really just that I want to just remind you of some high level points, because I know you haven't looked at this for a while. So I want to just read, I'm just going to read the opening statement and then remind us of the pillars, because I think they're really important. The Yakima School District promises is to ensure a safe, equitable, inclusive, and quality learning environment so that every student thrives and succeeds. I love that thrives is in there, and succeeds. Our vision is for a school system that focuses on every student every day, strengthening community through education. And I will say, lots of school districts say every child every day. Lots of them say that. Not all of them mean that. Lots of districts say that. But I love this next part, because I think it really gets under that. Delivery on these objectives requires us to name, confront, and disrupt the inequitable systems and practices that contribute to predictable, disparate outcomes on the basis of group membership, including race, class, language, culture, ability, gender, sexuality, and citizenship. This policy articulates our commitment to collective action to transform systems that have historically privileged a few towards educational justice for all, in partnership with students, families, community, and staff. Because race continues to be a persistent predictor of student success, student academic, post outcomes, the Yakima School District is committed to leading as an anti-racist institution. New and existing policies, programs, professional development, and procedures are to be regularly renewed, analyzed, and assessed through a racial equity lens. The generation, allocation, and management of district resources should also be exercised with a focus on expanding access and opportunities for those historically marginalized by school systems. And I want to offer, because the word anti-racist has gotten a lot of negative play, I want to offer to you a definition of anti-racism. I hear all the time, everywhere I go, well, I'm not a racist. And I would offer, I believe most people are not racist. They're not intentionally walking around calling people names. The idea of anti-racism is, how do we do more than just not be racist? How do we make sure when we see an issue, we see disparate outcomes, that we're targeting that and making sure with intention that we don't allow harm? We may not be causing harm, but our responsibility as school leaders and educators is to make sure not only do we not cause harm, but we create systems and structures that don't allow harm. That's really what anti-racism is about. It's not about saying you're either racist or not racist. We got to do better than that. Just not calling people names is not enough. It's saying, what do we do in HR? Saying, how do we make sure that we have, I love that there's the seal of biliteracy. So I helped to write that bill, by the way, at the state, because I was a language teacher. But I think about that, like, you saw a need for students to be able to get credit for a skill, an asset they had, right? And so that's a great example of an anti-racist policy, is let's get out in front of something. Let's not only not make fun of students who are speaking another language, let's actually acknowledge that that's an asset they bring. And that's really so all the political hubbub about anti-racism, I just want to offer a really simple understanding. It's that we can't afford to just not be racist. We have to get out in front of systems and out in front of structures and make sure that we're creating paths for all of our students to be successful and thrive. So there are 4 areas in your policy that you address. Climate and culture is one. I want to encourage you all to go back and look at those later. I don't want to take time today because you all have more work to do. So climate and culture is your first. Then talent, recruitment and retention. Leadership and practice. Sorry, I missed that one. And then talent. So I love that HR is here. And then teaching and learning. That's your instructional practice. So I'm going to invite you to take some time to look through that and look at those 4 blocks. And I would offer, as I say to every superintendent and every school board, you are not going to tackle this entire board policy this year, and you shouldn't. I would invite you as a board to think about, how could you help the school district pick 2 or 3 priority areas for the rest of the year? And then maybe 2 or 3 next year. Scaffold that. Because what I see districts do, and yours is one of the best equity policies I've seen in our state, what I see happen, though, is we write a really great policy and then it's overwhelming and we do nothing. Right? That happens a lot. And it ends up sitting on a computer somewhere, and we've written a really good policy. So I want to invite you as a board to think about, if you could prioritize, what 1 or 2 things from your policy could you really support your school district to implement? Not try to do it all, because I think that is an exercise in futility. I want to end today, if I can get my computer to work with me here. Technology. I'm having my own mute button moment here. It really does not like me. So my last question for you all is, especially for the school directors, as you think about this equity work, what do you see as your role in moving it forward? We've had a short time together, but as you think about it, is there something that rises to the top? Like, you know what, this is something that I can do. This is a role that I can play in moving this work forward. What is as a policy board, I know that you don't operate in the day-to-day, but as you think about your work as school directors, What do you see as your role in moving this equity work forward? And I know this is their first time looking at this, correct? Yeah. I mean, maybe it's just, I gotta learn more, right? That's a valid reaction to this. So I want to invite you to not feel like you have to know everything right now, that this is an invitation to get started and get curious. And I love how you talked about being curious earlier. But I would invite you to share what is a way that you see yourself as a board member being able to help the superintendent and the school officials move this work forward?
A couple things that come to mind for me is one, modeling equity in our work as a board and our interactions with each other. And then the second thing is ensuring that we create the environment for the superintendent to move that work forward and hold him accountable to that work.
Another thing might just be asking the right questions. I think as we've done other school visits, a lot of our schools have been really good about taking ownership of some of the strategic plan that they want to implement in their school. Well, maybe just adding a piece in, well, what are you going to do in terms of the equity policy and plan that you want to focus on in your school? And maybe, you know, the school itself can choose kind of what their goal is or what they're paying attention to. But just by us asking that question can sometimes spark that kind of work.
I love that, actually. Yeah. Because then there's an expectation that everybody's at least thinking about it, right? And they can choose where they're going to tack on. Yeah. Superintendent Green, what are your thoughts? How can they support you? I don't know if you can share that out loud, but.
I think that what's been shared is helpful, and I appreciate Norm and what he just shared also. I'd written down earlier, I think when you asked this question originally, the support, I put down board support and clarity. So just knowing where the board stands, and, you know, I have 3 of my 5 bosses here, but having that clarity and then knowing where the support lies creates that sense of, I guess you called it bravery, makes it so that I can do this work because we are doing this work. It's not one individual, it's all of us collectively. And yes, I'm in the role that I'm in, but I know that we have a strategic plan and equity policy, and we're being very bold and looking out for every individual, even when it gets rough, because the community or others may not understand the difference between equity and equality. So
Thank
for me,
you.
it's that clarity and knowing and having that support.
Awesome. Well, I don't want to keep you longer, but I do want to offer, WASDA is rolling out their training next month. I will be attending the training in Wenatchee on the 8th of May. I believe it's May 10th. That it will be here in Yakima at the ESD, but I'm going to go before to check it out. And I'm hoping that then I can follow up with you all and make sure that whatever training you get aligns with your equity plan, your equity policy, so that we're all using the same language. But you all are able to reach out to me if you have questions later, want resources, please, I am an email away. I look forward to working with you over the long term and really thinking about how do we make sure we're serving all students well and not just lip service. You have a great equity plan. So how can I support you in that work? I look forward to doing that. Remember, gratitude, brave, ground in, really powerful strategies that I think if we could all just make part of our daily habit, it will change how we all engage on hard things. So thank you so much for your time. Any questions that you all have before I leave and let you get back to the
Questions from
Steph.
board members? Thank you so much for being here. I really enjoyed the short session, and I found myself wishing it was a longer session. So, you know, we'll have to find an opportunity for you to come back and spend more time with the board and do more work with the board and do some training and activities. Thank you so much for all your work today.
Thank you.
I'd just like to add, Erin, thank you for being here. You're beautiful. You're a wonderful teacher. You prompted us to, I think you said sit up straight. And there was something else you said. I was already doing that. You already had me. I think that you're like, sit up straight. I'm like, I'm already sitting up straight. And I looked over and Graciela was sitting up straight already as well. So I think, you bring that sense, that aura with you, and you're somebody that we can certainly trust and work with. So thank you for being here today.
Thanks for having me. Okay.
All right, we are just about 2 hours into our meeting, so I'm going to call for a 5-minute break, and we'll come back at 5:17 p.m. All right, we will jump right back into our meeting here. The next item on the agenda is items of board interest, and first is reports from members of the board. Are there any reports from board members? I'll review our upcoming meetings with the group. On our next meeting, April 11, will be a fully virtual meeting, and the meeting following on April 19th will have a hybrid option. Will be in person at Eisenhower Auditorium or live streamed. And the location of future meetings will be finalized during the April 19th meeting. Next, we have the superintendent's update. Superintendent Green.
Thank you. Simply have 2 updates. The first one being a report on the grade reconfiguration for our early learning at the Discovery Lab site. I was able to meet with my team, with the staff members at Discovery Lab. Did have a follow-up meeting with staff members this last week as well. It certainly is difficult, and I understand it is an emotional issue. But I also recognize that we are moving in accordance with our strategic plan in calling out community commitment number 1, which is 19 of 20 of our students being prepared by Kinder in accordance with the WA-KIDS readiness assessment, which has 6 indicators. I also shared this with staff and with parents. We recognize that kindergarten readiness is an indicator for 3rd grade readiness, that there is a correlation between students coming in prepared and where they achieve at the 3rd grade level. And there is significant research to show that 3rd grade readiness and preparation is an indicator for future success all the way through high school, including graduation. As I've shared with others, both at the parents and community and staff members, and also with the board individually and through certain emails that were responded to that you were privy to. We have looked at other options before even approaching the suggestion to reconfigure Discovery Lab. To call out publicly, we were unable to access the old Stanton site, which would have been a wonderful facility, but once students are moved out of a facility and you receive funding through the state for a new facility, you can no longer put students back into that old facility, which is why the old Stanton site has become our tech center for adults, and that's where we stage all of our technical support. Other options that we looked at, or another option included a partnership with the Bezos Foundation, and we were excited about that possibility, but it was not deemed to be feasible, not now, or to the magnitude that we would need to address goal number 1, which is set for 2026. In addition, I met with the early learning staff to share with them also the announcement of the reconfiguration at Discovery Lab. So that is moving forward. We're again very excited about having our littlest learners in a place where we can certainly address their needs. And if you are looking at the strategic plan, we know, I know you probably have not gone through the 20-page document, but we have the community commitments, which are on just the compass page, which you've seen. But if you were to look at our Yakima School District strategic plan, on page 12, it outlines a page that aligns our 4 pillars with the different components or sub goals to reach, to help reach that 2026 commitment. And of those 12 goals, I will share with you that at least I can say the reconfiguration of grades at Discovery Lab, by doing that, we are addressing at least 6 of those sub goals to reach that goal of 2026. And I could elaborate that if the board would like at another time. But my main purpose was simply to just share with you that we are progressing again with that reconfiguration, and we're doing it for the right reasons. And it's going to make a long-standing difference for our preschool kids who then enter kinder and are eventually distributed throughout our entire system and will graduate from the Yakima School District. Any questions before I proceed? Okay. The other item that I wanted to flag for the school board is that we actually, at this point, I think the announcement has gone forth, and I've asked Dr. Darling to share a little bit more information, but we are anticipating that there will be some community frustration with the rebalancing of the two traditional high schools. An announcement went forth today to all of our students and parents, and to tell you a little bit more about that, I'll have Dr. Darling fill in the details, and then I'll pick it up afterwards. Dr. Darling?
Thank you, Dr. Green. So at 5:15, about 11 minutes ago, email went out to all of our current 8th graders, and then their high school staff and then middle school staff and counselors to let them know what their high school placement will be for next year. The process was completed. So as you remember, we were trying to find the best way to balance the attendance at our two comprehensive high schools without disrupting the choice as minimally as possible. And so students made their first choice and their second choice, and then we strategically placed students based on some specific categories: special education programming, or migrant students, homeless, and students that are homeless or experiencing McKinney-Vento issues. And then after that, we had a cut number for how many students we were going to be able to enroll into Davis this year to help balance those numbers. And then the other students received their second choice. And so that information went live to our students in our high schools, our Union Gap incoming 8th graders, and then a handful of students at St. Joe's who are in-district students that will be here next year.
So Dr. Darling, could you let us know the percentage of students that we believe may not get their first choice out of the 8th graders coming in?
Yes, thank you. So we looked at our enrollment and our choices for the last 5 years to kind of determine how many students we thought were going to be interested in choosing the Davis High School or Eisenhower High School as their first choice. And then we made a cap based on that number. So when we shared with you, we anticipated 12 to 15% of students this year would not get their first school of choice. As it were, when you tell students that they might not be able to get their first choice, our numbers of students that wanted Davis to be their first choice increased significantly this year. And so rather than a typical year where we had around 625 students wanting that school to be their first choice, we had over 700 and something students making that their first choice. So what we projected would be about 12 to 15%, ended up being about 20%. So this year, 20% of the students who wanted to get their first choice of high school will get their second choice. On the flip side, we anticipate next year that number will be significantly lower, because rather than capping it at 525 like this year, we'll probably be able to cut it in half for the next year. So we'll be half of one school, half of the other school, which we will probably be closer to about 5% of students next year will not get their school of choice.
Dr. Darling, how many 8th graders, do you have the number of how many 8th graders we have currently in the district?
We have 1,285 incoming 9th graders.
Okay. So we're looking at roughly around probably 220 families that will not get that first choice. So that's something of which we just need to be aware, because if I were one of those 220 families and we had a long-standing option in the Yakima School District of having choice, which is what we're trying to maintain, I would likely show up to a future board meeting and share my displeasure. The rationale, I have emailed to each of you some Q&A talking points that will hopefully be helpful. And if there's any further information that you need, I would be happy to share that. For the public, I would just call out that it's important for us to balance the enrollment at the two high schools, because we are seeing an inability to equitably serve both schools and provide like supports. When we have 12, I think, teachers or more, I'm looking at Jewel, that are on carts, which are going from room to room to teach during other teachers' prep periods and disrupting the ability for them to plan during that time, it impacts the way that our staff is able to deliver instruction. When we have outside organizations that are willing to donate tens of thousands of dollars and work around social emotional issues and mental health issues, but they can't because of lack of space in a facility, then we have one facility that is able to provide those services and another that is not. So the rationale and the reason that we are looking at this balancing of high schools for the first time ever is because we are not able to serve both in a way that is meeting the needs of our staff, but mainly our students. So that is the rationale. And of course, the options were to do a boundary option or a choice option. And given the, again, longstanding culture of having choice in the Yakima School District, we opted to stay with the choice selection. The irony of that is, of course, now we will have 20% of 8th graders this year that do not get that first option, that first choice. And also some of those students may actually live closer to one school than the other. And therefore the boundary, we're not going with boundaries, so it would still be going to the school that you were assigned. So are there any questions about that I could clarify or expound upon based on the rebalancing of the two traditional high schools?
So I have a couple of questions, and I think these questions were addressed in the FAQs that you sent us, but I think it would be good for the community to hear
Sure.
whoever's watching the meeting. Can you remind me the number of students that each high school should be able to hold comfortably, and then the number of students there today?
I'm going to have to defer to.
So both schools are designed to have 2,400. To start the school year last year, Davis was at about 2,700 and Ike was at 2,100.
And then with what we know today, the 700 students, I think you said 700 who selected Davis, if we allowed 100% choice, what that would mean that Davis had?
It would be about 3,000.
Okay.
Yeah. So as it stands for next year, Davis will have 530 freshmen and Eisenhower will have 697 freshmen. So it'll be a significant shift towards Eisenhower to balance those numbers.
Any other questions, comments from board members?
That's all I had for my report.
Thank you. Next item on the agenda are two approvals. The first is a request for approval to increase the current contract with Stepping Stones Group for the 2021-2022 school year, and Dr. Darling is leading that discussion.
Thank you. Let me pull it up here. All right, we are requesting that the Board of Directors grant approval to increase current contract with the Stepping Stones Group from $320,000 as initially requested to $540,000. This additional $220,000 will provide the district classified paraeducator staffing support. Essentially, we have not been able to hire enough people and we need more support.
Questions or comments from board members? I will entertain a motion that the Board of Directors grants approval to increase the current contract with the Stepping Stones Group from $320,000 to $540,000.
So moved.
Moved by Norm, seconded by Ryan. Is there any discussion? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Motion carries 3-0. Next item is request for approval to increase the current contract with ASL for the 2021-2022 school year. Dr. Darling.
Thank you. This is a very similar request. We're asking that the board grant permission to increase current contract with ASL, which ironically is the name of the company that also provides ASL services, from $300,000 to $420,000. This additional $120,000 will provide the district classified American Sign Language staffing support.
Any questions or comments from board members? I will entertain a motion that the Board of Directors grants approval to increase the current contract with ASL from $300,000 to $420,000.
So moved.
Second.
Moved by Ryan, seconded by Norm. Is there any discussion?
No.
All those in favor say aye.
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 Motion carries 3-0. The next item is pre-approval discussion of board rating reports. We have policy 1000.3.5, board members code of conduct. We evaluated this, reviewed and evaluated this board policy. 3 board members responded. There was on one of the questions a response of making that the board is not in compliance. And that is, let me go back to the notes here. 5.2, supporting decisions of the full board. Board is not in compliance with that. And that was my rating, and I've made comments throughout this board rating report. Some board members have not supported decisions of the board, and as we scroll through further, if the board is not in strict compliance with policies as stated, what evidence demonstrates the board is not in compliance? And the evidence I provided here is that one board member does not want to read the land acknowledgement. Another board member continues to question the board's decisions regarding the board's work on equity and the equity policy adopted last year. And my thoughts on what we can do to move to full compliance, committing to understanding decisions made by the board. This may mean reading past meeting minutes, additional meeting time as a board, scheduling additional meeting time as a board, or meeting with the superintendent to ensure clear understanding. And then what does the board need to learn or discuss to comply with policies more completely? The board needs to continue the equity work that started last year. We know that work is already planned. I also recommend that the board learn more about effective board governance and its direct link to student achievement and outcomes. And perhaps we can find a trainer or a consultant to provide a presentation on this topic at a Monday study session or at our next board retreat. And then also recommend that we talk about this further at our next board retreat to really have the opportunity to dive into the differences that we're seeing here. Any other thoughts, comments? Okay. So we can, let's see, this is, I'm trying to remember the process. So we can move forward in approving the board rating policy as submitted for 1000.3.5, or we can push approval. Is this the third instance? This is the third instance. Okay, so we are approving today. So I will entertain a motion that the Board of Directors approves the rating for policy 1000.3.5, board members code of conduct.
So moved.
Second.
Moved by Norm, seconded by Ryan. Any discussion?
No.
All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Motion carries 3-0. And that brings us to the end of our board meeting. Superintendent Green, do we have a need for executive session?
We do have need of an executive session for the purpose of performance of an employee. I suggest 5 minutes.
Okay. I will, and where are we meeting?
We'll meet in a conference room in the main office.
Okay. So I'll entertain a motion to move into executive session for purposes of discussing performance of a public employee for 5 minutes, beginning at, I guess we'll give people a few minutes to get there. So beginning at 5:45 p.m. I have a motion.
So moved.
Moved by Ryan. Second by Norm. Any discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Motion carries 3-0. Normal open session. Anything else for the good of the order? All right, meeting adjourned.